Today's guest on the Winning Teams podcast is an old friend of mine from Dublin, Paul Davis. Now, Paul is a very successful coach. He's been a business advisor. He's an author. He's a speaker who's in quite demand. But he's a very different approach to the traditional approach in terms of the business advice. He's got a background in accountancy, and so he's got that kind of deeply rooted, strong financial background. But he also has, and he explains the reason why he shifted his direction a little bit in terms of the work he's doing with clients and really helping clients to understand their life purpose. And as a process that really does help to unlock that, and how he can then apply that learning from the life purpose to the career or the business that the individual is embarking upon, or whether there's some changes is going to be made as a result of discovering the life purpose. So really interesting, slightly different to what you might have heard in the more traditional way. And Paul has got a very professional way, a very clear-minded way. And he has that lovely balance of kind of both sides of his brain that he brings to it, and really bringing in what the universe is looking for and helping people to find in terms of their own inner genius. So I really encourage you to listen to that. And I think it's a really interesting interview, and we could have gone on a lot longer, and maybe we'll come back and do a second one and dig a bit deeper into that. So be delighted if you enjoy the podcast, if you can go wherever you listen to your podcast and give us a rating, because that helps us to reach more people, which is the whole object of the exercise. But in the meantime, sit back and enjoy listening to the conversation with Paul Davis. Oh, nice to have you here with us today. I mean, you have a range of kind of pieces of work that you do. You're a business consultant, you're a speaker, you're also an author, you're a personal advisor, and you focus on transforming businesses by really getting people to focus in on around their life purpose. And so that's what you've been doing. Maybe just for everyone listening, give a little bit of background as to how you got to where you are right now.
Sure, yeah. There's a great spread of different things there, John. I originally trained as a management accountant, and my career would have been going into companies that were having financial difficulty and helping them to turn around as quickly as possible. And then when I set up my own business in 2001 under the heading of Davis Business Consultants, it was primary with that in terms of helping companies to grow and scale. So I've dealt with all company sizes, from solopreneurs right through to companies going for an IPO listing. And it covers all different aspects of their company. So whether it's developing new markets, new products, the culture within the organization, I've covered all different aspects within the company. But I suppose in 2011, then my business took a bit of a turn, primarily due to my first brother passing away, to be quite honest. So in 2011 that happened. So I published my first book in 2012. And that directed me towards helping people or guiding people in terms of what's going to give them fulfillment, what's going to, for one better word, activate their innate genius, and what's their authentic self, their true authentic self. So that's a lot of the work that I've been doing literally over the past 10 or so years.
Okay. So just maybe to lean into that for a moment, because you've got a slightly different approach than what would seem maybe the traditional approach to that. Maybe just to kind of share with that, because I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, when most people, so let me say, over the last couple of years, a lot of people would have been having time to reflect. And an awful lot of people have been saying to themselves, actually, you know what, maybe the job I need to go back to as a result of COVID and being at home is maybe not the job I want to go back to. You know, we've heard about the great resignation in the US, and we've heard a lot of people not returning to the office, let alone return to their job. And they're searching, and they feel that they're at a crossroads. And they're saying to themselves, look, I can do the job, but I'm not really getting the joy or the fulfillment from the job that I'm doing. And when most people are at that crossroads, They will search online or read books. You know, the first book that they probably pick up is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. However, when they've read the book, they realize that, well, it's the meaning that they apply to anything in their life. So in effect, what they're doing is they're applying a meaning to the job that they're doing. But it's not necessarily going to give them the true meaning. Other people will have read and come across online, perhaps, or even in books or videos that they've watched, you know, start with why and find your why. But here's the difficulty with that, because people are trying to find out their why using their conscious thinking. And ultimately, on top of that, they're trying to apply a why and work out their why based on what they're currently doing. But if the job or the role that they're currently doing is not what they're supposed to be doing in the first place, it's going to be the wrong why. Your true why, or I prefer to use the word inspiration, because the origin of the word inspiration is divine guidance. So your true inspiration comes from your unconscious, just as much as every single aspect of a true, authentic individual comes from their unconscious. It's what they were born with. It's their innate, literally what they were innately born with. And other people would say, find your passion, and if you find your passion, well, then turn that into your purpose in your business. But the thing about it is, passions are transient, and that's what people will find. They become passionate about doing something, but if they were doing it for a consistent level of time, 24/7, in effect, they will lose interest in those passions. And again, the origin of the word passion is to suffer, it's pati. So that's typically what people will try and find out when it comes to fulfillment. So I approach it completely differently, and I drill into, well, what's the evidence in a person's life that the unconscious is actually providing them with? So every single human being is innately driven to fulfill what their purpose is, or what's going to give them fulfillment. And there's so much evidence in a person's life that gives us that information of what the unconscious is trying to guide them towards. Now, for listeners, think of the unconscious as being, it's that intuition, it's that gut feeling. Everybody has that.
So how do you go about helping somebody to do that? I mean, I understand what you're saying kind of logically. I'm just curious as to how you actually get somebody to find that.
Yeah, so what I put together is a whole series of questions. And from each one of those questions, we're finding the evidence in a person's life. So let me give you a very, very simple example. If I was to say to you and take, well, let's look at all the money that you spend on things. And that could be, for example, ignore, the mortgages and the rents and the food and all that kinds of, because they're necessities. But let's look at all the things that you find yourself spending money on, and you're naturally guided to spend that money on. And even though you may not have the money at the moment, you'll find a way to do the things or get the things that you want to have, because again, you're innately driven to do, you're unconsciously driven to get those. So that's just one example of one of the questions, but it's looking at that kind of evidence. And when when we pull all that together, I'm able to find what I say, that there's 4 elements that makes up your life purpose. And that's your genius drivers, your genius inspiration, your genius role, and your genius, what have I lost? Your genius drivers, your genius role, your genius quest, and your genius inspiration. They're the 4 elements that makes up your full life purpose. But we find that information by asking those questions, to get the evidence in the person's life.
Okay. And does the purpose change over time?
No,
it stays the same.
Yeah, I get that asked very, very. Your genius quest is your mission in life. It is what you are to do. And the one question that everybody asks comes to me and say, look, what am I supposed to do in my life? What direction am I supposed to go in? That's your genius quest. So your genius quest never, ever, ever changes. It alters and evolves, but it never changes.
Okay. And I mean, you mentioned that there was the event with your brother's passing, that was kind of a catalyst for your change. But I also think, because you and I know each other for quite a number of years, you're the 7th son of a 7th son of a 7th son or something like that. Which I'm not too sure if that's actually, because we're Irish, that's actually has got a particular significance. But do you put any of this kind of intuition or kind of your own genius down to that?
It does, and that's where it started. So when I was growing up, you're absolutely right. I was born the 7th son of a 7th of a 7th. So as a kid, I was healing people. So people would come to the house and I'd do a healing, whether it be, cancer, rheumatism, you name it. So I was I knew growing up at a very, very young age that there was something different about me. I won't say the word special. I'll just say there's something different about me. So compared to all the other brothers that are in our family. But as I grew into, teenager, into my adulthood, into career and so on, there was this intuitive and this empathic side to me. And earlier on, I couldn't make sense of it because there was nobody there in effect to teach me, what does it all mean. But I would get insights, knowings, and imagery for clients that I would work with and people that I was around. And also from an empathic side, I'll pick up different information as well.
And then you go and become an accountant.
I know, yeah, it's funny, isn't it? But here's how amazing and perfect the universe is, because it's that accountant side of me that literally had to find logic in the intuitive side of me.
Right.
So now what I've done is, because I was getting the information from an intuitive perspective about an individual, I had to find the evidence. I had to find logic, because that was the accountant side of me. And clients would turn around to me in the early days and say, Paul, you're just making this up. But now I can actually prove to them literally in their life, the imagery that I would get to match what their true life purpose is. Okay. And now that's so the event in 2011 with my brother passing was to stop hiding that intuitive side. Yeah.
So going through that process and you're really helping people to find their purpose, and whether they're a senior executive in the corporate world or they're kind of running their own business. How do you then help to shape them? Because where they're standing, irrespective of which one they are, may be conducive to actually leveraging that to fulfill their purpose, or it may not, right? Yeah. So it's great if it is leveraging them to fulfill their purpose. Yeah. How do you deal then with the 35 to 45-year-old who's kind of up to their neck in mortgages and and all of that? So say, hang on a second, you're in the wrong place. How do you actually manage that for them, rather than saying, well, tough, you're in the wrong place and good luck?
with great difficulty. So, but that's exactly what happens. And that's funny enough, again, how perfect the universe is, because the business consultancy side of me now, because I've dealt with so many different businesses in all different industries, I'm able to see how we can either monetize or commercialize what their true life purpose is. But the individuals that are within, and I would have had a few of them over the years, whereby, for one better word, the golden handcuffs are too much. So they're on the big salaries, they're on big bonuses, the big commissions, all the kinds of things. But yes, they also have a family and a mortgage and so on. So for them to transition can be difficult for them. But every single individual I come across will always have those fears show up. They say, well, who am I to do this, or where do I even start? What will happen if? And it's always those fears, and that's literally the understanding of fear anyway. But as we work with them, and so a lot of the cases, it's done in a parallel way. It's very great. It's great when they're in a company and we can just slightly, for one better word, a common term that came out with COVID was pivot.
Yeah.
But what we do is we slightly alter the direction of that company to be fully in line with the owner of the company or the CEO of that company. And then we get everybody within the company to be aligned through their own genius drivers to what and bring them fulfillment within the work that they're doing. So that's how we do it from that perspective. But where it's a company that it's at a juxtaposition position to what they're currently doing, now we've got to do that. From my perspective, in most cases, I'll do it in parallel. Some people will literally jump ship in terms of, because they have sufficient resources behind them, they have the wherewithal and the experience to say, Lashley, do you know what, I'm going to go after this. And some of the executives that would come to me, they would be at the point of, for one better word, breaking point. I would have quite a few that would have considered, planned, or even attempted to check out of life. Even though they have everything, they have the cars, the houses, the money and all that kind of things, but they literally just don't have that sense of fulfillment and meaning. And they're the ones that are, thankfully, they've had the resources, therefore now they can actually design and create a new business that they want to create, completely aligned with those four elements that makes up their life purpose.
Yeah. And once you actually helped your client to be clear about their life purpose, How do you help them, or how do they help themselves kind of sustain that and not kind of drift away from it, or get kind of driven off the direction that they're going in? Because I can see people say, okay, it's great, but 6 months down the road, I've kind of got stuck in, and I've got back into my, I'm working all the hours, I've done the other thing, I'm just, it's great ideologically, but I've just kind of drifted away from it.
Yeah. So it's a great question, John. So I use a lot of aviation terms. So please play with me on this one in terms of my own business, because I love everything to do with flight experiences. So once we identify what a person's life purpose is, which is those 4 elements, I create what's called a pilot's manual. And that pilot's manual, it literally is a 1-pager along with an ebook so they get a deeper understanding of how each element works together. But that 1-pager, clients will literally put it in a frame or put it up on a wall. They'll put it in a book, they'll put it somewhere safe, and they're constantly referring to that pilot's manual and making sure. So when they feel that they've gone off track, they're reminded and they come back to that and say, look, here's where I've gone off track.
Yeah.
But a lot of time when I work with clients is the first part might be around, okay, how do we commercialize this? How do we monetize it? How do we start the life in alignment with what their life purpose is? But then after that, it now becomes about personal mastery, because ultimately, what I developed over the years is what I call the executive code. And the executive code literally is all about achieving personal mastery. And it's on that journey. So the different things that show up where people perceive them as being challenges, or people perceive them as being negatives in the world, it's a case of, well, no, it's looking at how we view those challenges very, very differently. And now life becomes, I'm going to use the term effortless, because it does become effortless. You're working innately, or you're working in alignment with your innate genius. And therefore now, if you design your life around that, now things become an awful lot easier.
And if you look at the impact that work has had, I mean, you and I both work with a lot of large multinationals.
Yeah.
And for you to help somebody to actually find their purpose, how does that impact their leadership style and approach?
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, it's huge. And I call it the ripple effect. So, okay, so one of the elements that makes up your life purpose is what I call your genius role. And your genius role is something that you're born with. You naturally do. You don't have to work at it or develop any skills on it. So over the years, in working with all the clients that I've worked with, I've identified 10 different genius roles. But because people have kind of progressed through companies, they're wearing different hats, and therefore they're not operating in line with their own innate genius role. So from an individual's perspective, we align the role that they're to do within the company to their genius role. And some people it'll be very different for them, in terms of, like, a leader, for example, as a genius role will be very different to what I call as being the parent role. 2 very, very different roles.
Yeah.
So when we align them, and we also align the individuals within the company, both from a fulfillment perspective, also what's going to activate their innate genius, which is their genius drivers, and also doing work that's in line with their genius role. Now it's huge. The impact is massive. And for a lot of people right now at the moment, even in employees within company, an awful lot of the conversations that I'm having, but also you'll see this whether it be online or in newspapers or periodical articles and so on, and it's people saying, why are we doing what we're doing? It's where's the fulfillment from? Where am I getting the meaning from? So we're seeing a huge move of employees out of companies, literally just purely because they want more out of life, and that's the big shift that's going to be happening over the next number of years.
Yeah, well, yes, you can see that. Just curious, just when you're talking there, just curious, I think, do you ever start working with somebody and they just could not find their purpose?
No.
Okay, maybe ask it slightly differently. Do you ever work with somebody that was extraordinarily difficult for them to find their purpose?
No.
No. Does that makes it sound as if it's easy, but I'm assuming it's not easy.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
It is easy.
I've perfected it and honed it to such a level now that I developed a course over the last year. That course was launched in May of last year. And now people can go through that course and find out what their unique life purpose is literally within 2 days.
So
And
they can
I
do
know
that.
I know that's a tall order for people to even understand, because the vast majority of people that will come to me and say, look, Paul, I've been searching for 20 years trying to find out what my life purpose is. And literally I have found it within the space of 2 days. When I work with people on a one-to-one, I do it in half a day.
Right.
And that's
Okay.
the difference, because I've honed it so specifically, and the methodology that I use in order to actually find, and it's, I say it's the true authentic life purpose. It's not just, you know, it make you up and so on, because people, when they discover it, because there's so much evidence that's been unearthed in their life that gives them the information, they know it to be true. And it for people that are sensitive, so intuitives will be highly sensitive. So for people that are sensitive, it resonates internally with them. They know deep down, oh my God, this is absolutely true.
Because it's at that very deep emotional and psychological level that you're really trying to resonate. It's not a left-brained logical exercise in that sense. But it's actually getting them to actually acknowledge that. How much are large organizations embracing this type of work from your experience?
Very few, because they're distracted on a few different things. Because, and again, a huge area that I work on is, I prefer to use the term mental fitness as opposed to mental health, but it is a huge area that I work within, because I have a huge amount of experience in it, and again, given the work that I do. So a lot of companies are distracted with mental health or mental fitness, and they try and put in programs from that perspective, but it doesn't solve anything. I know that's really hard for people to understand, but from the research that I've done and from all the work that I've done, it puts a sticky plaster on it. So part of the work that I do is literally, which is part of the executive code, is, for one better word, is dissolving a lot of the stuff that causes a lot of mental health issues. And you could have somebody and anybody within the company, from a CEO right through the whole company, that will encounter those issues.
Yeah, and your definition, Paul, of mental fitness. I mean, what are the core component parts that actually makes up mental fitness from your perspective?
One is knowing. Okay, so let me put it this way: you've got to know how, for one better word, how the universe works. That's one aspect of it. What a lot of people.
Sorry, can I just pause you? Just elaborate on that one just for a moment.
Okay, so a lot of people try and have a one-sided life, but there's no such thing as a one-sided life. So what do we mean by that? There's the big, huge movement from positive thinking, and positive thinking goes on the basis of a one-sided life. So think positively and fulfill your whole day just trying to think positively. So really what you're doing is you're trying to be blind to a whole other part of you, a whole half of you, because again, so there's 12 different universal laws. One of the universal laws is the universal law of duality, meaning there's always both sides. So in every single aspect that an individual goes through, in every single event, in every single moment, there's always both sides. There's never one side. So understanding that, even literally just from that perspective, and knowing that there's both sides, every single event that people perceive as being a negative event, when we find the positive in the negative event, now we're seeing both sides. That's the universal law of duality. So that's part of what I teach in the executive code, in terms of seeing all those aspects. And now that's where it becomes an awful lot easier to navigate through life. But let me put it this way: the only thing that's certain in life is uncertainty.
Or death and taxes.
But people want and they strive for certainty, but there's no such thing. So when you start to recognize and realize, actually, uncertainty is part of life, and you get to be able to live easier with it. Now life, again, all those aspects come to having life an awful lot easier. And that's part of literally what causes a lot of mental health issues, because they're looking for a fantasy, they're looking for a one-sided life, and they're judging themselves in comparison to somebody else, in terms of saying, look, somebody's made more money than me, or somebody's looks better than me, or they wear better clothes than me. So
Yeah.
they're constantly judging themselves, which again is a never-ending cycle in terms of bringing down their own self-worth.
Yeah. Sorry, I distracted you from the point you were making about mental fitness.
I've lost it. Point on.
Yeah. Okay. The question was one more.
So mental fitness is understanding all of that, and then what you're doing is you're building resilience in how you approach life every single day and how you approach circumstances. So even when you've got a challenge in a company, but it doesn't matter where you are within the company, but you can approach that in a very, very different way. That's mental fitness.
So are there tools, are there things that you do to help people to do that? Because it's all very well saying that, but when you're actually hit with the problem, you've got to be able to respond as opposed to react.
Yeah.
And our natural thing is to react. But what you're saying is that you want somebody to respond to it. So yes. What tools do you bring to people to help them to do that?
One of the first things that I'll get anybody to do that's been hit with a moment is I'll get them, and everybody will be familiar, or most people will be familiar with this. Definitely a lot of professional speakers will be familiar with this, which is referred to as box breathing. So you, in effect, box breathing means that you're breathing in very deeply for 4 seconds. You hold it for 4 seconds. You exhale for 4 seconds, and then you hold your exhale for 4 seconds. So that's why it's referred to as box breathing. But what that does within the brain is it rewires the brain in effect, and it grounds the individual. And now if you do that for 3 or 4 times from a box breathing perspective, now you're fully grounded. And now you can stand back and say, okay, look at how do we actually address what's actually showing up right now at the moment. So now you're not reacting, you're literally responding.
Okay, I'm with you. Paul, this is fascinating. We could go on talking about this because, well, you know that I love this topic, and you know that I'm passionate about it. So, you're kind of preaching to the choir here. But I think the approach that you have got, I think is hugely important in this day and age, and clearly with so much going on, not just the impact of COVID, but lots of other things that will come into bear. I think that the timing for the work that you're doing is perfect. Before you share everybody where people can get in touch with you, I mean, we'll put it in the show notes and all of that. But if they're listening now, where they can get in touch with you. 2 questions I ask everybody that comes on the show. One is a book. That's other than your own, by the way. Sorry, can't self-publicize your own books here. This bit. A book that's had an impact upon you, maybe something you read recently or something that you read many moons ago. And I know you because I know that you're an avid reader. I can see the books behind you, so it's a question of which one you pick. But which one comes to mind when I ask the question?
There's one that when I do recommend it to people and they've read it, they say, "Oh my God, that was an amazing book," and it's actually your surname as well. So it's actually The Power of the Subconscious Mind.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's one. Another book, just if somebody's already read that book, I would say an amazing book to read is The Hiding Place by the author is Corrie ten Boom. So it wouldn't be your natural business book, or let alone a personal development book, but it is actually a really there's a huge amount of hidden messages within that book.
Hiding Place, is it?
Yeah, it's called The Hiding Place.
I haven't heard that.
Yeah, so it's, the author is Corrie ten Boom, and she survived the concentration camp in Ravensbrück. But she tells her story in relation to her father and her sister who passed away. But then she survived and exited, and it's what manifested in her life after that, and so on. So it's a really, really interesting story. But there's a few life lessons in it as well.
Right. Okay. That's an interesting one. That's one to add to the list. So that Power of Subconscious I have read before. Well, where can people get in touch with you? Where can they reach you? What's the easiest way for them to do that?
The easiest way, honestly, is just to my website, which is paulwilliamdavis.com. And on that, there's so many different resources. There's free stuff that they can download. There's the course that I have. If people want to find out what their life purpose is, it's there on the website. And there's a whole load of different ways of how you can get in contact with me. So yeah, paulwilliamdavis.com is
okay. And by the way, congratulations on that site. There is a load of really great information on that. It is fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us here on the Winning Teams. It's been a great joy to have you. It's nice to see you. We haven't seen each other in a while, and great to catch up. Thank you for being a great guest.
Thank you, John. Thank you.